Let me introduce the Procaliber Generation 3, a bike that raises 3 questions for me. The first one is, does it make sense to buy a Hardtail in 2025? The second, can you actually feel ISO BOW's effect? Importantly, has moving to 120mm made it lose its pure cross-country character? We have work to do, so let's find answers to these questions. Let's go. Let's do the introductions. Here we have the Procaliber Generation 3, the hardtail mountain bike that has always been considered a competition bike in the American brand's catalog and now comes redesigned. In terms of geometry to start, we have a slacker head angle of 67 degrees, a steeper seat tube angle, and a slightly longer reach. In addition, we have a suspension that has increased to 120mm of travel. Here's an important fact I'll mention up front, and that's that the frame is built with optimum compaction low void carbon fibers, which are the highest quality from Trek, and it's a single frame, the same one you'll find in absolutely every model in the lineup.
These new measurements might give the impression that the bike has lost its cross-country essence and has turned into a long travel bike without purpose. Take that!
Lately, I've had the chance to try out modern bikes, hardtail mountain bikes, and honestly, they've left me with a bit of a bland impression. The evolution to 120mm travel seen in full suspension bikes has also been tried with hardtails, but also by reducing the head angle to possibly unreasonable levels, like 63 or 64 degrees. By extending the reach, lengthening the wheelbase, these bikes fall into a limbo between trail and what others call down country. But they definitely don't give you the pure cross-country riding feel, that feeling of a bike that's reactive when you stand up and start pedaling, bikes that you can handle really well in corners, that you can actually turn from side to side and with a lot of speed. With these models, they've lost their way a bit, and I get it, because with a full suspension bike, since you have 2 suspensions, it's much easier to balance the front with the rear. However, with a hardtail, you have to be much more precise. Fortunately, the people at Trek have made an evolution, but a measured one, because they did go up to 120mm, but we have a 67-degree head angle, which is pretty balanced. The reach has also been lengthened a bit, and to compensate for that, the chainstays have been shortened to 430mm in length. And with this, the wheelbase has increased, but just a little bit.
All of this combined with a very low bottom bracket and a super short head tube gives you a bike with an impressive level of responsiveness. The quintessence of nimbleness, gentlemen, exactly what we're looking for, those of us who long for the pure riding sensations of cross-country. In a way, it's like riding an old 26-inch bike, but of course, with all the modern features. With axles, boost, and stiffer frames. And in the end, that gives you a lot more confidence going downhill. And what about the 4-piston calipers, which I hadn't mentioned yet, but there they are. Yes, rigid bikes, but with 4-piston calipers. Somehow, and the one I just had a bit further back, they're going to save you. Go ahead, yes.
With this, we have answered the first questions. No, the Procaliber hasn't lost its cross-country essence. Now the next question, can you really feel the ISO BOW? Trek has always aimed to offer their hardtail models. And not just mountain bikes, but even some previous road models like the Madone, that added comfort for the cyclist. They traditionally use the ISO speed system, a pivot at the seat tube and top tube junction. But with ISO BOW, they've gone even further. It's probably the natural evolution because on one hand, they've made the whole setup lighter in some sizes, even 200 grams lighter compared to the previous model. On the other hand, it's been simplified because mechanically there's nothing here. The system is part of the frame structure. Another key point in my view is the aesthetics. Because beyond the hole, which is already curious in itself since we're not used to seeing that kind of structure in a bicycle frame. Well, we have the fact that the seat stays go up with their characteristic diagonal line well into the top tube, so it maintains a very interesting design line. Also, it matches very well with what would be a rather pronounced sloping of the top tube, and that gives the bike a really distinctive character. It's really interesting to get on the bike and find that being able to see the rear bottle through the frame, it's clear that aesthetically that hole is a real highlight. How does the system work? Well, traditionally, hardtail bikes have flex in the seat stays. In this case, the engineers at Trek wanted the flex area not to be limited to the seat stays. It should stop here, but instead it goes all the way to this point. Therefore, what we have is, in a way, a top tube that actually starts here and goes toward the head tube. Some seat stays don't end at the seat tube junction, but extend all the way to this point. With that, they achieve the independent movement they wanted around the seat tube area. Now, is it noticeable? I have to confess that it took me 3 days to start feeling that things were happening around that area of the bike. Because ultimately, these modern mountain bikes, even when they're hardtails, or especially when they're hardtails, the wheels handle most of the absorption with 30mm wide internal rims, tires with a very generous volume of 2.40 at low pressures. In the end, it's the tire that does most of the work. But there is one specific situation. Do you get the feeling that the isobo is moving? We're talking about a situation with very fast movement, on a track with a very regular surface, very rough, no problems. Let's get into the details. Trek offers 3 Procaliber models in the catalog. To begin, the 9.5 starts at €2,000, while the 9.6 is priced at €2,600, and what would now be considered the top of the range. Although it isn't in terms of materials, which we're going to see now, it's the highest end model we're going to find of this Procaliber, the 9.7, which is this unit you see here. Of course, with the GX new T-type, with the 1052 cassette with the completely flat chain and the 34-tooth single chain ring. Plus, it comes with a 120mm RockShox SID, like we mentioned before, and also the carbon wheels with drag gear. Covey Elite with 30mm of internal width to provide good structure for a 2.40 wide tire, like this Pirelli Scorpion XCRC, which, as you can see, has a very versatile tread pattern. It's practically going to work well for you in any circumstance. In this high-end range, we're going to find the RSL Trek's carbon cockpit. I want to mention something that I really liked, which is the control to control both the dropper post and the suspension lockout with just 2 buttons, and it works. An incredible dropper post that, depending on the size of the bike, will have 100mm of travel, 150 or 170, and the capacity to carry 2 bottle cages. And some very interesting news. And this same frame, in this same beautiful red marble color, is available on its own for a price of €1,500, which I think is quite competitive considering how things are right now. And this bike, just as it's sold to us in the store, weighs around 10 kilos and 500 grams. Let's discuss the frame details. Specifically, Trek has managed to reduce the weight by 200 grams compared to the previous model. Depending on the size, we're talking about a total weight in size M, already painted, of 1,200 grams. It's not among the world's lightest frames, but it's clear Trek focused on structural stiffness and ISOBOW functionality. On the other hand, we have the cable entry on the side of the head tube, thus avoiding maintenance issues and problems with the housings. Routing the cables through what would be the headset, a simpler system is impossible, maybe less aesthetic, but it's very functional. However, we don't have the knock block found on other mountain bike models from the brand. But as you can see, it's not really necessary either because the frame has so much sloping, at least in size M, that they don't hit each other. Does it have it? The cranks are with the top bar. Important. We have a press fit in the bottom bracket with the capacity to use a maximum 38-tooth single chainring. Tire clearance 2.4 maximum width. But as you can see, there's still plenty of room left in case the trend for 50mm tires ever comes around. I think you could fit them in, even if it's not officially supported. And a seat tube diameter of 31.6, which is universal. You can get a dropper or traditional seat post from any brand in any model. 5 sizes. Wait, 5? Also, finally, we have a caliper with a post mount to separate the braking from the entire flexing function of the seat stay. Let's move to pros and cons. Which do you prefer? Let's start with the cons with something that has to do with the structure of the bike. The bottom bracket is very low. This has both negative and positive sides, which I'll discuss later. But let's say the negative side has to do with the fact that in very technical areas where we find stumps and rocks, it's relatively easy to end up hitting the cranks on those obstacles. On the other hand, the catalog is very limited, with only 3 hardtail mountain models, not just in Trek, but in all brands. For example, the top-of-the-line models are disappearing. And to this, we have to add as a downside that there are few color options among the 3 models they offer. If we go to the positive side of the pros, the handling is the first thing I have to mention. Also, the low bottom bracket plays a role in this. As a positive aspect, it's truly a joy that Trek has managed to maintain the pure essence of cross-country riding. On the other hand, I think it's one of the most beautiful and interesting hardtail bikes I've ever seen, thanks to the isobo. The fact that there's a single frame for all the ranges, for all the models, is very positive. Because you can also buy it at a starting price of 2,000 euros and then little by little keep upgrading it. You end up with a top-notch bike over time without making a big initial investment. Always the same very important, interesting frame. Within the current context of retail prices we have, I think selling the frame alone has a very competitive price. For a brand of this caliber, on a model of this level, let's get to the million-dollar question. Is it worth buying a hardtail in 2025? We have to be honest and admit that hardtails have lost prominence because they've been overshadowed in the brand's catalogs. On one hand, because of gravel bikes, and on the other, because of full suspension bikes, with this new evolution to 120. And it's also true that within what is strictly mountain biking, they can't compete against full suspension bikes on these circuits that are now so technical. But it's also true, and let's give them a bit of credit, that they are still the most affordable way to get into the world of mountain biking and the one that requires the least maintenance. And what I'm about to say now, no one will be able to argue with me about it. They're the best way for a biker to learn technique. If you master one of these bikes, you'll excel on a full suspension. So, if I can share a personal thought, as a biker who has always defended hardtails, it's no coincidence I've always shouted hardtail power out loud. I tell you not to get carried away by marketing or trends. Gravel bikes are great, and so are full suspension bikes. But depending on the terrain you'll be riding on and how you're going to use the bike, you really need to consider the option of a hardtail. Because on one hand, we have versatility. Imagine for 4,500 euros, this 9.7 full suspension on the current market with 120mm. What can we find? Are bikes weighing 13.5 kilos or 14 kilos considered heavy and hard to move? With this, you're gonna have fun. If we put some slick tires and a 38-tooth single chainring on it, you'll be able to keep up really well with any gravel group you might find. So So you have a lot of versatility in a single platform. And if you want it just as it comes as a mountain bike, well, everything I mentioned before applies. I don't know. Are we entering a new era? Hardtail bikes are gonna keep being around for a while longer, maybe a bit in the background, but I still find them really useful. I don't know how you all see it. Let me know in the comments. I'm really looking forward to reading your comments. Not just about hardtail bikes, but specifically, what rating from 1 to 10 would you give to this model I've shown you today? Be happy, like the video to help my channel grow. See you in the next videos. Bye.